Hello everyone, and welcome back to your next APES screencast. In this screencast, we'll finish our abbreviated discussion of Chapter 9. Remember that Chapter 9 covers how we can protect and sustain biodiversity by saving species and ecosystem services. We begin today with a case study that involves kudzu. The kudzu vine was imported from Japan in the 1930s in order to control soil erosion. It spread very quickly and proved difficult to control. The plant can grow a foot a day and earn the nicknames Mile a Minute and the Vine That Ate the South. The kudzu bug was then imported also from Japan to help kill the kudzu vines. Unfortunately, the kudzu bug also proved to be an invasive nuisance that killed soybean plants as well. In the photo on the left, kudzu has grown around and over an out-of-service car in Georgia. On the right, you can see the extent in which kudzu has grown and crowded out native vegetation. Another case study involving invasive species is that of the Burmese python. Native to Southeast Asia, these pythons were first brought to the United States as exotic pets. In 1992, Hurricane Andrew destroyed a python breeding facility, releasing countless snakes into the swamps of the Florida Everglades. In this new environment, they reproduced rapidly and were very hard to kill. They have greatly depleted Everglades populations of native rabbits, foxes, raccoons, possums, and deer. The University of Florida researchers in this photo are holding a 15-foot-long, 162-pound Burmese python captured in Everglades National Park. This python had just eaten a 6-foot-long American alligator. The first P in HIPCO stands for overpopulation and overconsumption. An ever-growing population will degrade the surrounding habitat as habitat is destroyed and resources are extracted to make way for more and more people. This diagram shows how urban development has spread in the San Francisco Bay Area between 1850 and 1990. Urban areas are shown in red. The second P in HIPCO stands for pollution. Pollution is the introduction or presence of a substance that has harmful or poisonous effects. Pollutants can make their way into the tissues of an organism through the process of bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation occurs when an organism takes in more of a pollutant than its body can get rid of. Pollutants can then make their way through a food chain or food web through a process called biomagnification. In biomagnification, an organism eats several other organisms with pollutants in their tissues. Over time, pollutants can become more and more concentrated the higher up a food chain or food web you go. A good example of this is fish. Fish have high concentrations of mercury because of biomagnification. The insecticide DDT is a chemical that can accumulate in the fatty tissues of animals. In a food chain or web, the accumulated DDT can biologically magnify in the bodies of animals at each higher trophic level, as is the case in this food chain. DDT caused the eggshells of birds to be so thin that the eggs would break under the weight of the parental birds. The C in HIPCO stands for climate change. Climate change will create significant environmental changes that will cause some species to go extinct, while other species that can tolerate warmer weather will spread. In the Arctic, we are seeing Arctic amplification, where temperatures are rising twice as fast as anywhere else in the world. Arctic ice is melting, decreasing polar bear habitat and threatening the existence of this animal. Unlike other bears, polar bears do not hibernate. They must continue hunting and feeding year-round. With less ice, they will have to swim farther and farther to find the ice they depend on for camouflage and hunting. There's evidence already that weaker female polar bears reproduce less often, making polar bear populations vulnerable to climate change. This is a photo of a polar bear struggling to survive. As climate change causes hunting and reproduction to become more difficult, we expect to see this more often. And finally, the O in HIPCO stands for overexploitation. This includes the poaching and smuggling of animals and plants. Poaching refers to illegal hunting. In order to combat this, we will need more research and education. Research will help us understand the magnitude of the problem, and education will help people understand the ramifications of their behavior beyond the money they can make from the overexploitation of animal and plant resources. A tiger skin and a poached gorilla are pictured here on this slide. In this photo, shark fins are being dried to make shark fin soup. It's estimated that 100 million sharks per year are killed for their fins. The rhinoceros in this photo was killed for its horn. In China and Vietnam particularly, rhinoceros horn is ground up and consumed as a medicine and as a symbol of wealth. These horns, however, are made of the same material as your fingernails. These are cockatiels smuggled in plastic bottles from Indonesia as part of the illegal pet trade. The demand for bushmeat is threatening some African species. Bushmeat includes exotic meats used for food. West and Central African wild animals are especially at risk of being hunted and killed for bushmeat because of poverty, political instability, and warfare. Threatened species include monkeys, apes, antelopes, elephants, and hippos. Miss Waldron's red colobus monkey, pictured here, once lived in West Africa and is now extinct due to hunting. It was last seen in 1978 and declared extinct in 2000. The photo on the left shows a stew made with bushmeat, and the photo on the right shows bushmeat being sold at a market. This is a photo of a wet market in Wuhan, China, where bushmeat is sold. Frogs and fish are being sold by the vendors here. Some scientists believe that this is where the COVID-19 virus jumped from wild animals to humans. Several international agreements have been made to protect biodiversity. In 1975, the hunting, selling, and trade of endangered species was restricted by the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or CITES. This treaty was signed by 172 countries. In 1992, the Convention on Biological Diversity, or CBD, was signed. This treaty focuses on protecting ecosystems and ecosystem services. It also emphasized the rights of indigenous people and promoted the precautionary principle, where steps would be taken beforehand to prevent disaster or catastrophe. It was ratified by 190 countries, but not the United States. In 1973, the Endangered Species Act, or ESA, was signed by Republican President Richard Nixon. It identifies and protects endangered species in the United States and abroad. It also created the National Marine Fisheries Service for the protection of ocean species and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for all others. Because of the Endangered Species Act, many endangered species are seeing improvements or have made full recoveries in their numbers. Notable examples include the grizzly bear, bald eagle, and American alligator. The American bald eagle, pictured here, was removed from the U.S. Endangered Species List in 2007. In order to protect biodiversity, we can also establish wildlife refuges and other protected areas. In 1903, Theodore Roosevelt established the first federal wildlife refuge on Pelican Island in Florida. Most wildlife refuges today are wetland sanctuaries. These wildlife refuges have worked but are not immune from natural and anthropogenic disturbances that can occur around them. Seed banks, botanical gardens, and wildlife farms can also help protect species. Seed banks are places where we can store and protect the seeds of plants. Doing so can preserve the genetic material of endangered plants. Botanical gardens and arboreta preserve living plants. Keep in mind the San Francisco Botanical Garden or the Conservatory of Flowers. Wildlife farms can raise organisms for commercial sale to take the pressure off wild populations. This is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault in Norway. It was designed to store and protect seeds in the case of natural or man-made disaster. Permafrost and thick rock will keep seeds frozen even without power. These are minks on a mink farm. The minks will be used for fur, and ethical considerations aside, they reduce the need to hunt for wild mink. Zoos and aquariums can save some species as well. They use techniques for preserving terrestrial and aquatic species, such as egg pulling, captive breeding, artificial insemination, embryo transfer, use of incubators, and cross-fostering.